Good morning, Pastor Rusty. And these are the pastor's thoughts today. Considering the parable of the sowers that Jesus taught, he spoke about many things. The sowing on the path that was hardened, sowing on the rocky soil, which, there was not a lot of dirt there, so the seed couldn't grow. And then the one that was sown among the thorns, and of course the one sown in the good ground. I was dwelling on the thoughts this morning of the one sown in the thorns. And it reminded me, last year we planted a bunch of nice tomatoes. We went and bought them. They were, beefsteak kind of tomatoes, and we had some Roma tomatoes, and we went and purchased these plants, and we sowed them in our little, 2 foot by 8 foot little raised bed that we have, and we were going to grow some tomatoes just so that, come later in the summer we would have some tomatoes. We love, vine ripened tomatoes grown at home. And so as they were growing, I noticed that there were some volunteer tomatoes coming up behind the bed, between the bed and the wall. And these were these indeterminate little cherry tomatoes. And they had zeal. I mean, they grew and grew and grew. They sooner or later overtook. And I let them grow simply because I thought, well, that'd be great. We'll have some little cherry tomatoes. They did real well the year before, and we'll have those, and that'll be nice. We can come out and get some off the vine, and we can cut them up in our salads and things like that. So I just let them grow. Well, it didn't take long that they overtook the good tomatoes that we purchased. And I kind of just let them grow. I thought, well, they'll just lay on top and they'll hold one another up. And I was staking the good tomatoes, and I had a fence around it because we had rabbits. And so the cherry tomatoes were laying on the vines and on the fence. And I thought, well, they'll be okay. We'll just move them aside and get our good crop. Well, as the summer progressed, I noticed that I wasn't getting any tomatoes and I wasn't getting any height of one of our big beefsteak tomatoes. And I so wanted to get some of those big tomatoes for sandwiches. And so I went and checked, and come to find out, the cherry tomatoes had grown and wrapped themselves around the vine of those good determinate tomatoes. So they weren't going to get very big anyway because they're determinate. And the other ones, well, they were just overtaking them. And pretty soon they choked out the top of the plant. Then I noticed it had actually fallen over because of the weight. What had grown above where it was choked out had fallen over, first of all, because it was choked out. Secondly, because of the weight of these unbelievable little indeterminate cherry tomatoes, it had fallen over, and it broke the good vine, the vine that we had paid for, the vine that I so wanted fruit from. The other ones I just let grow well. They were there. They were free. Let them go. And I didn't cultivate. I didn't take care of. And it made me think about that parable. See, Jesus told the story, and he said that the ones that grew among the thorns didn't have any fruit. It says, because the worries of the world and the deceitfulness of riches and the desires for other things entered and choked out the word. And I thought, that's basically the same thing. I know a lot of people in my life who have been on fire for the Lord, or they gotten involved in Sunday school, or gotten involved in whatever ministry they decided to get involved with, and they had great zeal. And they were working along, but then other things began to creep in. The kids get a little older, they start wanting to do more things, takes them away from church. They end up getting, recreational vehicles that they can only use on the weekends, and they're working all week. And so next thing you know, they miss a Sunday here, miss a Sunday there. And, this has happened in my own life where I just get concerned with maybe not riches, but the lack thereof, or I get concerned with other things I'd like to be doing, and I just don't take the time to be in the Word, to nourish and cultivate that relationship with the Word of God. And then I notice that I start forgetting things, or I start saying, oh yeah, the Bible does say that. And before long, I'm so caught up in, let's say, the cares of the world, that the thoughts about God and His kingdom, the nourishment that it needs to grow, that continual in-feeding and taking care of and cultivating the Word of God in our lives begins to get strained and choked out. And that's exactly what Jesus was teaching there. He was teaching that, the Word of God is sown, and it must be taken care of. It must be in a good place. I mean, the great thing to do if you're going to plant tomatoes is to get rid of all the volunteer tomatoes, or get rid of all the thorns, or get rid of all the other stuff. And, we have to cultivate that. Otherwise, the weeds, man, you've heard the old saying, grows like a weed. Well, weeds will overtake everything. And when we Christians get weeds in our life, and thorns and thistles, how many people do we know that were on fire serving the Lord, and something didn't go the way they thought it should go? They have it in their mind how it should be, and it didn't happen that way. and they want to give up on God, or they say, well, where was God when this happened? And see, a lot of times the problem with that is because we don't have a flourishing, well cultivated harvest of the fruit of the Word of God. And I think about that. Sometimes our inward fruit gets choked out, where we're not growing in peace and love and long suffering, and we're not growing in what the Bible calls the fruit of the Spirit. And sometimes we're not growing in fruit of reaching out, being evangelistic, being mission minded, being others minded, being missional in our life outside of our home. We're not reaching people for Christ. We lose a sense of compassion or even care for those things. We figure the old lost and dying world is getting what it deserves. Then we forget about the grace that's been shed on us. We forget about the mercy that we've received, and we forget how to show mercy. And a lot of times it starts because we don't take care of our garden. It starts because even in the Song of Solomon in the Old Testament, it starts because the little foxes come and ruin the vines. They pick off the blossoms before it can ever turn to fruit. And we let the care and deceitfulness of riches in this world and those things choke out the Word of God in our life, so that we don't then grow and we're not able to withstand the storm when it comes. These are some things that I have witnessed in my life. I would guess a lot of you have too. So let's take a little time today and let's just think about what is in our life keeping us from a closer relationship with the Word of God, so that we can know more about God, so that we can serve Him fully and bring forth much fruit. Watch out for those little volunteer vines that grow up. They'll choke out what you're cultivating. Well, I'm Pastor Rusty. I'll talk to you later.